Dr. Emily Anderson blinked hard at her monitor, trying to force her tired eyes to focus. The soft blue glow of quantum detection arrays filled the cramped observation room of Lunar Base Armstrong, accompanied by the gentle hum of cooling systems keeping the sensitive equipment at optimal temperature. This was her fourth consecutive night shift, and the coffee in her NASA-issued thermos had long since gone cold. "Just 2 more hours," she muttered, reaching for her cup. The bitter liquid barely touched her lips when every screen in the room erupted with activity. Coffee splashed across her white lab coat as she jerked forward, her fatigue instantly forgotten. What the hell? Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, bringing up detailed readings. The quantum detection array was picking up something massive, yet impossibly precise. Most deep space signals were messy. Radio waves scattered across light years, degraded by cosmic radiation and stellar interference. But this was different. "Computer, run diagnostic check on array 7 through 12, she commanded, already reaching for the direct line to her supervisor. The computer's response stopped her cold. All the arrays functioning within normal parameters. Signal verification at 99.99998% certainty. Emily leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding. In 15 years of deep space monitoring, she'd never seen anything like this. The signal was encrypted, but not in any way she recognized. The patterns shifted and changed even as she watched, adapting like a living organism. "Dr. Roberts," she finally pressed the call button. "You need to see this." Her supervisor's irritated voice crackled through the speaker. "Anderson, it's 3 a.m. lunar time. This better be." "It's using TCP/IP protocols," she interrupted, knowing that would get his attention. "Sir, whatever this is, it's using internet protocols from the 1970s, but encrypted with. I don't even know what this is. The encryption is evolving in real time." There was a long pause. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't do anything until—" "Sir," she cut in again, her voice tight. "The signal's origin point is just beyond Neptune's orbit. Whatever sent this, it's in our solar system." The next hour was a blur of activity. Security personnel filed into the observation room, followed by senior researchers and military liaisons. Emily stayed at her station, processing the incoming data as the signal continued its relentless broadcast. "The encryption," she explained to the growing crowd, pulling up visualization graphs. "It's not trying to hide the message. Look at these patterns. It's like it's trying to prove its authenticity. Like a digital signature, but infinitely more complex." Colonel Hayes, the military liaison, leaned over her shoulder, hostile. Emily shook her head. "I don't think so. The base encoding. It's using our own protocols. Whoever sent this wanted to make sure we could understand it. They studied us first." "How long to crack it?" Dr. Roberts asked, his earlier irritation replaced with intense focus. Emily's fingers danced across the holographic interface, running simulations, with traditional methods. "Years, maybe decades. But," she paused, an idea forming. "They used our old protocols as a foundation. What if we—" She turned to another console, bypassing the quantum computers and accessing something much older, a restored RPNET terminal, kept running for historical research. As she fed the signal through its primitive but foundational protocols, new patterns emerged. "Look," she pointed at the screen. "The encryption, it's responding to the old system. It's like it was designed to be decoded this way. Give me a few days with a hybrid setup. Old RPNET architecture powered by quantum processing, and I think we can crack it." Colonel Hayes was already on his secure phone. "I want every available cryptography expert redirected to Lunar Base Armstrong. Full clearance, no questions asked." He looked at Emily. "Whatever this is, Doctor, it chose to talk to us for a reason. Let's find out why." As the room buzzed with activity around her, Emily stared at the shifting patterns on her screen. In the abstract dance of light and data, she could almost see something deliberate, Like the signal wasn't just carrying a message, it was trying to tell them something about its senders. And somehow, she knew, humanity wasn't going to like what it had to say. 3 days without sleep had left Dr. Emily Anderson seeing double, but she couldn't stop now. The makeshift decryption lab they'd set up in Lunar Base Armstrong's main conference room hummed with energy as quantum processors interfaced with vintage ARPANET terminals. Countless coffee cups littered the workstations, testament to the round-the-clock effort of her international team. "Running decryption sequence 2247, announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, her eyes red-rimmed from staring at screens. "Using the modified ASCII protocol you suggested." Emily nodded, massaging her temples. They'd made progress. Painfully slow progress. But the message's complexity was unlike anything they'd encountered. It was as if the encryption had been designed to test them, to ensure they were technologically advanced enough to deserve its contents. "Wait." Emily straightened in her chair, spotting something in the data stream. "There's a pattern here. Look at how it responds to the original TCP/IP handshake. It's not just using our protocols, it's using them exactly as we designed them. No improvements, no alien efficiency optimization." Colonel Hayes, who hadn't left the base since the signal's discovery, stepped closer. Meaning whoever sent this studied our technology and chose to use it in its original form. They're not showing off their superiority. They're trying to make us comfortable. Emily's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Dr. Tanaka, mirror my terminal. Let's try something crazy." Emily pulled up the original ARPANET documentation, studying the fundamental handshake protocols that had birthed the Internet. Then, with a deep breath, she began coding a response to the signal using nothing but original 1970s commands. The effect was immediate. The encryption began unraveling like a flower blooming in fast motion. "Holy shit," someone whispered. The main screen filled with images that made no sense at first. Alien landscapes, strange geometric ships, scenes of devastation that seemed to span entire worlds. But it was the next sequence that made Emily's blood run cold. "Those are surveillance photos of Earth," Colonel Hayes said, his voice tight. "Recent ones." The images kept coming. Our cities, our satellites, our military installations. Then text began appearing, automatically translating itself into every major human language simultaneously. Emily read aloud from the English version. "To the species designated as humanity, this warning comes from those who were once like you. We are the refugists, survivors of worlds processed by the galactic hegemony. Your world has been marked for integration. You have less time than you think." The room erupted in controlled chaos. Military officers rushed to secure phones, scientists huddled over data streams, and Emily felt her heart pounding against her ribs. But the message wasn't finished. The screen shifted to video footage that would haunt Emily's dreams forever. Massive ships descended on peaceful worlds, unleashing weapons that seemed to defy physics. But it wasn't just military conquest. The footage showed something worse. Entire populations being systematically broken through sophisticated psychological warfare, reduced to hollow-eyed workers in vast mining operations. "We have watched your species," the text continued. "You broadcast your entertainment, your wars, your achievements into space. The hegemony believes these broadcasts mark you as primitive. They do not understand what we have seen in your transmissions, something unique in the galaxy." More footage played, but this time intercut with humanity's own broadcasts. Documentaries about survivors of natural disasters, war refugees rebuilding their lives, communities recovering from devastation. The message continued. "In 7,000 conquered species, we have never seen this trait, the ability to document, process, and grow stronger from trauma. The hegemony's primary weapon is psychological submission. But your species, you turn trauma into strength. You create art about survival. You imagine apocalypses and plan for them. You may be our last hope." Emily felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders as she read the final lines. We risk everything to send this warning. The hegemony approaches. But if you can share your resilience, teach others to resist as you do, perhaps the galaxy can finally change. We await your response, humans. You are not as alone, or as helpless, as they want you to believe. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of computers. Colonel Hayes was the first to speak. "Dr. Anderson," he said quietly, "I believe it's time to wake up the president." The White House Situation Room hummed with tense energy as Emily Anderson finished her presentation. The president sat motionless, hands clasped before her, staring at the final images of hegemony atrocities frozen on the display screen. 7,000 species, the president repeated, and they all broke. Not immediately. Emily pulled up new data streams from the refugists' transmission. But the pattern was always the same. The hegemony would begin with targeted psychological warfare, broadcasting scenes of resistance being crushed, demonstrating weapons that defied known physics, showing the futility of hope. Admiral Chen leaned forward. "And yet they sent us this warning through entertainment broadcasts. Seems like a hell of a risk." Emily nodded, switching to a new display. "That's where it gets interesting. The refugists have been monitoring our transmissions for decades. They included this analysis." The screen filled with a bizarre mixture. Independence Day playing alongside footage of 9/11's recovery efforts. Post-apocalyptic movies next to documentaries about communities rebuilding after natural disasters. War films beside historical footage of countries rising from the ashes of defeat. The hegemony saw our broadcasts and categorized us as primitive, a species still obsessed with conflict and disaster. Emily's voice grew animated, but the refugists saw something else. "Dr. Williams, would you explain?" Dr. Sarah Williams, the head of psychological operations, stepped forward. "Most species, when faced with trauma, try to forget it. They bury it. But humans, we process trauma through art, through story. Every disaster we faced, we've turned into a way to prepare for the next one." She gestured to the screen. "Look at how our disaster movies evolved after 9/11s. How our climate fiction changed as global warming became a reality. We don't just survive trauma. We rehearse it, imagine it, prepare for it. It's like humanity has been unconsciously training for this moment for centuries." The Secretary of Defense cleared his throat. "Are you suggesting we can resist because we watch movies?" "Not exactly," Emily interrupted. The refugists included psychological data from processed worlds. When the hegemony arrives, they don't just demonstrate power, they execute a precise campaign of demoralization. Show up with impossible technology, demonstrate unstoppable weapons, prove resistance is futile. Every species they encountered froze in existential despair. She pulled up more data. But look at humanity's response to similar situations. The Battle of Britain, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the American Revolution. Time and again, when faced with overwhelming odds, humans don't just fight. We find meaning in the struggle itself. The president's national security advisor spoke up. "The refugists believe this makes us immune." "Not immune." Emily's voice softened, but resistant. "They've observed something unique in human psychology. When other species face extinction-level threats, they shut down. We write books about them. They see inevitable defeat. We imagine impossible victories. They accept despair. We—" She paused, searching for the right words. "We get angry," the president finished quietly. "Exactly." Emily brought up the final data set. "The hegemony's psychological warfare depends on breaking a species' will to resist. But humanity has spent millennia building psychological antibodies through our art, our stories, our way of processing trauma. We don't just survive. We study survival. We turn it into a science." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the president stood. "Dr. Anderson, you said the refugists are waiting for our response. What exactly do they want from us?" Emily took a deep breath. They believe we can teach other species our resilience, not just through military resistance, but through sharing our way of processing and overcoming trauma. They think we can break the hegemony's perfect record of psychological dominance. By sharing our stories, the president said, not quite a question. By sharing our humanity, Emily corrected. Our art, our defiance, our ability to stare into the abyss and imagine climbing out of it. They think we can infect the galaxy with hope. The president walked to the window, looking out over the Washington Monument gleaming in the distance. How long until the hegemony arrives? Based on the refugists' data, 2 months, maybe less. Then we better start writing one hell of a story. The president turned back to the room. Get me the UN Secretary General, and someone find out if Hollywood keeps their CGI teams on standby. The hegemony ship materialized above New York City at exactly 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, a perfect sphere of impossibly dark material that seemed to swallow sunlight. Emily Anderson watched from the hastily established Global Response Center in the rebuilt World Trade Center, her heart hammering against her ribs. Size estimate, Colonel Hayes demanded. 2 kilometers in diameter, someone replied. No visible propulsion system, no energy emissions we can detect. It's just sitting there. Emily glanced at the countdown clock they'd installed after the refugists' warning. 53 days early, she muttered. They're not following their usual pattern. The sphere's surface rippled like liquid mercury, and a smaller craft descended toward Times Square. Global news networks, already positioned according to the hastily established first contact protocols, broadcast the arrival to billions of watching humans. Here we go, Emily whispered. Is everything in place? The president's voice came through clear on the secure channel. All assets ready. Time to see if your crazy plan works, Dr. Anderson. The hegemony's diplomatic vessel, sleek and predatory, touched down in the cleared space of Times Square. The usual tourist crowds were gone, replaced by a carefully chosen welcome committee, scientists, military officers, and government officials from every major nation. Behind them, the square's massive video screens appeared to be displaying normal advertisements. High Overseer Xanthol emerged from the craft, its crystalline exoskeleton catching the midday sun. 8 feet tall, with multiple limbs arranged in perfect geometric symmetry, it moved with the casual confidence of absolute power. 2 lesser hegemony officials flanked it, carrying devices that Emily recognized from the refugists' warning. Psychological warfare projectors. People of Earth, Xanthol's voice resonated through advanced translation technology. You are witnessed by the eternal hegemony. Your world has been chosen for processing. Resist, and every screen in Times Square flickered simultaneously. The manufactured advertisements vanished, replaced by crystal-clear footage of hegemony atrocities supplied by the refugists. Xanthol's speech faltered as it saw its own species' crimes displayed on massive screens. Worlds stripped bare, species broken and enslaved, civilizations erased. High Overseer Xanthol, Emily stepped forward from the welcome committee. We've been expecting you. Though I must say, you're ahead of schedule. The alien's crystalline form shifted colors rapidly. Shock, Emily realized, remembering the refugists' cultural notes. Impossible. Our arrival protocol is perfect. You cannot. Have friends? Emily smiled. You're not the only ones who've been watching us, High Overseer. But while you saw primitive broadcasts, others saw potential. The screen shifted again, now showing a carefully curated sequence. The Berlin Wall falling, tanks facing down protesters in Tiananmen Square, the Arab Spring, and 1,000 other moments of human defiance. Each historical clip was paired with its corresponding cultural impact: movies, books, art, and music inspired by resistance. What is this? Xanthol's translator couldn't quite capture the tremor in its harmonic voice. This is humanity processing trauma, Emily replied. You're used to species that break under existential threat. We turn it into fuel. You show unstoppable power. We imagine ways to stop it. You demonstrate inevitable victory. We write stories about impossible defeats." She gestured at the screens, now showing scenes from independence movements across human history, each successful against overwhelming odds. "Your psychological warfare depends on convincing species that resistance is futile. But humans, we've spent our entire history resisting futility itself." Xanthal raised itself to its full height, its crystalline form pulsing with dangerous colors. "You know nothing of our power. Your defiance is being broadcast across every hegemony frequency," Emily interrupted. "Right now, along with everything we learned from the refugists, every atrocity, every weakness, every crack in your perfect empire. How long before your other processing candidates see this?" The alien leader froze, its colors shifting chaotically. In that moment of shocked silence, every screen in Times Square displayed the same message, translated into all known hegemony languages. "You taught the galaxy that resistance is futile. We're about to teach them that you're wrong." Project Storyteller is live in 3, 2, 1. Emily Anderson watched as the quantum transmission arrays around the globe activated simultaneously. From deep space installations on the moon to hastily modified radio telescopes in every major observatory, humanity's response to the hegemony began its journey across the stars. "Signal penetration confirmed," Dr. Tanaka announced from her station. "The refugists' transmission codes are working. We're bypassing the hegemony's communications blackout." The Global Response Center's main screen showed their broadcast spreading through known space like a digital wildfire. Decades of human entertainment, carefully curated and edited, flowed through channels the hegemony thought secure. But this was no random data dump. "Package 1 deploying," Emily confirmed, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface, beginning with the fall of Rome. The first sequence was masterfully crafted. The collapse of the Roman Empire, followed by the Dark Ages, then the Renaissance. Each historical tragedy was paired with humanity's recovery, growth, and evolution. The message was clear: empires fall, but civilization endures. "Got something," Colonel Hayes called out. Hegemony communication showing significant spikes in chatter. "They're trying to shut us down." Emily smiled. "Too late. Package 2. Deploy." The Black Death ravaged across screens throughout hegemony space, showing humanity at its lowest. But then came the recovery, the scientific revolution, the birth of modern medicine. Every disaster carried the same message: what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Multiple uprising reports confirmed, someone shouted. 3 processed worlds showing signs of organized resistance. The world wars came next, humanity's darkest hours. But instead of hiding these atrocities, the broadcast highlighted what came after: the United Nations, international cooperation, the longest period of relative peace in human history. The message evolved: we learn from our mistakes. Hegemony fleet movements detected, Hayes reported. They're mobilizing. Good, Emily replied. Deploy Package 3. The Cold War filled alien screens. Humanity on the brink of self-destruction. But again, the story didn't end there. It showed how we stepped back, how former enemies became trading partners, how cooperation prevailed over mutually assured destruction. The lesson: even the most bitter enemies can find common ground. In the response center, displays showed the broadcast's impact. Processed worlds, long thought broken beyond recovery, were awakening. The refugists' underground networks, armed with humanity's template for resistance, began coordinating across systems. Dr. Anderson, the president's voice came through. The hegemony is demanding we cease transmission. They're threatening immediate military action. Deploy final package, Emily ordered, ignoring the threat. The screens lit up with humanity's response to contemporary challenges: climate change, pandemics, social upheaval. But now every crisis was shown with its corresponding moment of unity. People of different races, religions, and nationalities working together. communities rebuilding after disasters, global cooperation in the face of existential threats, multiple hegemony vessels approaching Earth, Hayes warned. "Let them come," Emily replied. "Everyone on their ships will see our broadcast too." "Lieutenant, are the cultural adaptation algorithms running?" "Yes, Mom. The broadcast is automatically adjusting to each species' cultural framework. They're not just seeing our history, they're understanding it through their own cultural lens." The final package concluded with footage from the past 2 months. Humanity's united response to the hegemony threat. No panic, no surrender. Instead, unprecedented cooperation, preparation, and determination. The broadcast ended with a simple message, translated into every known language in the galaxy. To all processed worlds, you are not broken. You are not alone. Humanity stands with you. The hegemony taught you that resistance is futile. We will teach you how to resist anyway. They showed you that hope is a lie. We will show you how to hope again. They made you forget how to fight. We will remind you. This is not just our story. This is your story too. Rise up. Resist. Rebuild. We will show you how. As the message repeated across the galaxy, Emily turned to her team. Now we find out if humanity's greatest export will be our technology, our resources. She paused, watching as reports of uprisings continued to flood in, or our stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The first reports of organized rebellion came from Proxima Centauri's processing colonies. Emily Anderson watched the grainy footage, transmitted through makeshift communication arrays built from salvaged hegemony tech. The rebels, a silicon-based species once known as the Vex, had turned their mining equipment into weapons. "They're using our guerrilla warfare tactics," Colonel Hayes noted, studying the footage. "Look at the hit and run patterns, straight out of the Revolutionary War playbook we transmitted." Not just the tactics. Emily pointed to a makeshift banner the rebels carried. It showed a phoenix rising from ashes, a human symbol of rebirth, adapted to Vex crystalline art. They're adopting our symbols too, our way of processing resistance through art. The Global Response Center had transformed over the past week. Alongside military strategists and scientists, it now housed historians, artists, and cultural experts. Every successful rebellion technique from human history was being adapted and transmitted to processed worlds. "New transmission from the refugists," Dr. Tanaka announced. "They're reporting successful uprisings in 12 systems. The hegemony's trying to contain the information. But they've never dealt with information warfare like this," Emily finished. She pulled up the latest transmission analytics. Every processed species is adapting our methods to their own culture. The Vex are using mining rhythms as battle songs. The aquatic marins are turning their underwater farming networks into resistance communication channels. The main screen shifted to new footage. A hegemony processing facility on a distant moon, now decorated with massive murals. The artwork showed scenes from Earth's history: the Berlin Wall falling, Gandhi's Salt March, the Velvet Revolution, but depicted through alien artistic styles. "They're not just copying us," Dr. Williams observed, her voice filled with wonder. "They're processing trauma the way we do, taking their pain and turning it into fuel for resistance." An alert flashed across the screens. Emily's heart raced as she recognized the encryption pattern. Another refuge's transmission, marked urgent. "The hegemony is executing their standard response protocol," she read aloud. "Overwhelming force against the weakest rebellion, trying to make an example." She trailed off, her eyes widening at the next lines. "What is it?" Hayes demanded. "It's not working." Emily looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "The hegemony showing their unstoppable weapons, their perfect victories, but the rebels, they're not breaking. They're recording everything, turning their defeats into stories of martyrdom, rallying cries for other worlds." The room erupted in activity as more reports flooded in. The hegemony, masters of psychological warfare for millennia, found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. Every show of force became propaganda for the resistance. Every public execution created new symbols of defiance. New transmission from the Vex leadership, Tanaka announced. They're asking for Shakespeare. Emily laughed. Send them Henry V. The Street Crispin's Day speech, and include the historical context of how humans have used it to inspire resistance for centuries. Dr. Anderson, the president's voice came through, tense but controlled. The hegemony has issued their final warning. They're mobilizing their main fleet, not just a show of force this time. They mean to make an example of Earth. Emily looked around the room, at the humans who had spent weeks teaching the galaxy how to resist. Scientists, soldiers, artists, and historians, all united in an unprecedented effort to share humanity's most powerful weapon, hope. Let them come, she replied. Every processed species is watching. The hegemony thinks they can break our spirit. We'll show them what happens when you corner a species that turns trauma into strength. She turned to her team. Send out the final protocols. Every resistance cell, every rebel group, every processed world gets our complete database. Military tactics, encryption codes, cultural preservation techniques. Everything. If they want to make an example of Earth, we'll make sure the galaxy learns the right lesson. The president's voice was quiet but firm. And what lesson is that, Doctor? Emily watched as another processed world reported its first successful uprising, using techniques borrowed from Earth's long history of resistance. That's the thing about stories, Mr. President. Once they're told, they can't be unheard. The hegemony taught the galaxy to submit. We taught them to hope. Let's see which lesson lasts longer. They came at dawn. The hegemony's planet Cracker fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wall of darkness blocking out the stars. 5,000 ships, each larger than Earth's largest city, arranged in perfect geometric formation, a display of order and overwhelming force that had broken 7,000 species before. Emily Anderson stood in the silent Global Response Center, watching humanity's response unfold. All nations reporting ready, Colonel Hayes announced, his voice steady. Operation Thunderbolt is go. The first surprise came from the oceans. Nuclear submarines, previously thought obsolete, surfaced simultaneously across the globe. Their missiles, retrofitted with quantum-enhanced warheads, developed from Refuge's tech, streaked toward the hegemony fleet. Interesting, High Overseer Xanthal's transmission cut through all Earth's communications. But futile. Like all who came before. The missiles detonated, not with explosions, but with targeted quantum disruptions that rippled through the hegemony's perfect formation. 30 ships fell out of alignment, their geometric perfection shattered. Impossible. Xanthal's harmonic voice cracked. Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons, Emily transmitted back. But ballistic missiles. Sometimes old tech works best. Humanity's first lesson, never forget your roots. The hegemony fleet reorganized, preparing their planet Cracker weapons. But Earth wasn't done. Civilian hub. Execute, Hayes ordered. Across the globe, thousands of civilian computers activated simultaneously. Regular people, gamers, programmers, hackers, had been trained for this moment. Using protocols developed from studying Refuge's data, they launched the largest coordinated cyber attack in history. Hegemony ships began firing on each other as their navigation systems were compromised. Their perfect communication network, supposedly unhackable, met humanity's chaos theory algorithms and digital guerrilla warfare. Second lesson, Emily transmitted as a quarter of the hegemony fleet descended into chaos. Never underestimate ordinary people. The hegemony's response was brutal. Remaining ships launched extinction-level weapons, devices designed to crack a planet's crust. But they met humanity's third surprise. Shield network activated, Dr. Tanaka reported. The quantum shield network, built in secret using modified hegemony tech, sparked to life. Every major city on Earth had contributed computing power, creating a distributed defense system unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Fascinating strategy. Xanthal's voice dripped with artificial calm. But our weapons cannot be stopped. Your shields will fall. Your civilization will end. All this defiance for nothing. Emily smiled as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Are you sure about that? The quantum communications network lit up with transmissions. The processed worlds, using Earth's tactics, had launched coordinated strikes against hegemony supply lines and command centers. The Vex had taken 3 processing facilities. The Marins had liberated their home system. You see, High Overseer, Emily continued, while you focused your fleet here, we taught the galaxy something you never understood: how to turn defeat into victory. A massive explosion lit up the space above North America as civilian hackers turned another hegemony ship against its allies. Your weapons might crack our planet, Emily transmitted. You might even wipe us out. But we've already won. Because we taught the galaxy how to resist, how to hope, how to turn trauma into strength. The hegemony fleet's perfect formation had completely collapsed. Ships fired randomly, their crews in chaos as Earth's transmissions broke through their psychological conditioning. Look at your empire now. Emily's voice carried across all frequencies. 7,000 species are watching Earth resist. Your perfect record of psychological dominance is shattered. And even if you destroy us, you've already lost. Because we didn't just teach them to fight. We taught them to survive, to rebuild, to rise again. Xanthal's response was lost in a cascade of signals as processed worlds declared their independence. The hegemony fleet, mighty enough to crack planets, but helpless against the spread of hope, began to retreat in disarray. In the response center, Colonel Hayes turned to Emily. Think they'll be back? Emily watched as reports of successful rebellions continued to flood in from across the galaxy. Species that had been processed for millennia were rising up, using human tactics, human symbols, human hope. Of course they'll be back, she replied. But next time, they won't face Earth alone. They'll face a galaxy it remembers how to resist. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Emily Anderson stood at the podium in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly on Luna. Below her, representatives from over 300 liberated worlds gathered, some in environmental suits, others appearing via hologram, all united by a shared journey from submission to freedom. The hegemony called it processing. She began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. A clinical term for something brutal. They didn't just conquer worlds. They broke spirits. Until humanity showed the galaxy another way. The assembly chamber itself told the story. Its walls were covered in art from 100 worlds. Murals depicting rebellion, recovery, and rebirth. Each species had adapted Earth's symbols into their own cultural context. The Vex's crystalline sculptures showed phoenix-like forms rising from shattered geometric patterns. The Marin's sonic sculptures echoed with adapted human battle hymns. But this assembly isn't here to celebrate humanity, Emily continued. We're here to celebrate something greater, the birth of a galaxy it refuses to break. Screens around the chamber displayed the ongoing transformation. The hegemony, its perfect image of invincibility shattered, faced internal collapse. Over half their territory had declared independence, using techniques learned from Earth's long history of resistance movements. The refugists first came to us because they saw something unique in our broadcasts. Emily gestured to the original quantum detection array, now preserved as a historical artifact. They saw a species that turned trauma into strength. What they didn't realize was that this gift wasn't unique to humans. It was just dormant in others, waiting to be awakened. Dr. Tanaka, now Earth's chief liaison to the Vex Liberation Front, brought up the latest statistics. Across former hegemony space, processed worlds weren't just fighting. They were healing. Using human psychological techniques adapted to their own cultures, species were recovering from millennia of conditioning. But the greatest victory wasn't military. Emily's voice softened. It was cultural. The hegemony controlled through isolation, making each species feel alone in their suffering. We showed the galaxy how to share their stories, how to turn individual trauma into collective strength. The assembly chamber's central hologram displayed the newest addition to the solar system, a massive space station where representatives from liberated worlds shared knowledge, tactics, and hope. Its design incorporated architectural elements from every member species, a physical symbol of unity and diversity. "Look at what you've built," Emily addressed the gathered representatives. The hegemony taught submission. You created cooperation. They enforced uniformity. You celebrated diversity. They tried to make you forget who you were. You remembered, and helped others remember too. Updates continue to stream in on secondary displays. Another hegemony processing facility converted into a cultural preservation center, another slave world declaring independence, another species rediscovering their ancient arts and traditions. The transmission that made the Galactic Empire tremble wasn't just a warning about their arrival. Emily smiled. It was the first spark of something they never expected. A galaxy learning to hope again. The chamber erupted in their species' various expressions of agreement. The Vex crystalline forms chimed in harmonic resonance. The Marin's bioluminescence pulsed in synchronized patterns. Even the normally stoic refugists' environmental suits flickered with emotional indicators. The hegemony still exists, Emily acknowledged. They still control significant territory, but their perfect record is broken. Their psychological dominance is shattered. And every day, more processed worlds remember how to resist. She gestured to the Earth, visible through the chamber's transparent dome. They came to break us, to make us an example. Instead, we taught the galaxy that trauma doesn't have to define you. That resistance isn't futile. That hope, once kindled, can never be fully extinguished. The assembly rose in unified celebration as Emily delivered her final words. The hegemony thought they were processing worlds. Instead, they were creating the seeds of their own destruction. Because once you teach someone how to hope again, how to resist, how to turn suffering into strength, you've given them something that can never be processed away. As the celebration continued, Emily watched the Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was regrouping, planning their revenge. But they would face a different galaxy this time. A galaxy that remembered how to fight back.